The snow had stopped falling an hour ago, but the cold still clung to the city like a quiet ache. Street lights glowed softly, reflecting off the thin white layer on the sidewalks, and the bus stop at the corner of Maple and Ninth looked almost forgotten. Just a metal bench, a flickering timetable, and the hum of a city that didn't slow down, even on Christmas Eve. That's when the boy said it. Mom said Santa forgot us again. The words were small, simple, but they hit harder than the freezing wind. The man sitting on the far end of the bench looked up. He hadn't meant to listen. He hadn't meant to care. Yet somehow those 7 words slipped past every wall he'd built around himself. Before we go any further, if stories about hope, kindness, and unexpected miracles touch your heart, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps us keep sharing stories that remind us what really matters. The boy couldn't have been more than 9. He wore a thin jacket that had clearly seen better winters, his sneakers damp from melted snow. Beside him sat a tired-looking woman, his mother, her hands wrapped tightly around a paper cup of coffee she probably couldn't afford but desperately needed. The man on the bench, well, the world knew him as a billionaire. Headlines called him ruthless, brilliant, untouchable. On business magazines, his smile looked confident, sharp, powerful. But tonight, there was no driver waiting nearby, no luxury car idling at the curb, just him, alone, on a bus bench, on Christmas Eve. His name was Daniel Cross, and he hated Christmas, not because he didn't believe in joy, but because he once did. Daniel glanced away after hearing the boy speak, pretending to check his watch. It was an expensive watch, worth more than most people made in a year, but tonight it felt heavy on his wrist. Useless. Time hadn't been kind to him. The boy swung his legs nervously, staring at the road. "It's okay, Mom," he said quickly, as if he'd realized. He'd said too much. Maybe Santa's just busy. He's got a lot of kids. His mother smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah," she said softly. "That must be it." Daniel felt something twist inside his chest. He remembered being that boy once, sitting on cold steps outside a tiny apartment, watching other kids drag shiny bikes and colorful boxes inside warm homes, telling himself excuses so his mother wouldn't feel worse than she already did. The bus was late. Of course it was. Christmas Eve always messed with schedules. Daniel stood up, pacing slightly, trying to shake the feeling. He didn't do emotions, he didn't do strangers. He did contracts, numbers, decisions that moved markets. Feelings were messy, inefficient. But the boy looked up at him. "Mister?" the boy asked, innocent curiosity in his voice. Daniel froze. "Yes? Do you think Santa forgets? People on purpose?" The question was so earnest it hurt. Daniel swallowed. "I don't think Santa forgets," he said carefully. "I think sometimes he just waits." The boy frowned. Why? So the surprise means more when it finally comes. The boy considered this deeply, then nodded. "I hope so." The mother finally looked at Daniel, a mix of embarrassment and apology in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said. "He talks to everyone." Daniel shook his head. "It's fine," he replied, and for once he meant it. A gust of wind blew past them, and Daniel noticed the boy rubbing his hands together, trying to warm them. Without thinking, without planning, Daniel shrugged off his long wool coat and held it out. "Here," he said. The mother's eyes widened. "Oh no, we couldn't." "It's warm," Daniel interrupted gently. "And I don't need it." That wasn't entirely true, but it felt true enough. The boy's face lit up. "Are you sure?" Daniel nodded. "Positive." The coat swallowed the boy, sleeves too long, but he smiled like he'd just been handed treasure. The bus arrived moments later with a hiss of air and tired brakes. As the doors opened, Daniel felt something unexpected, a reluctance to let this moment end. As they boarded, the boy turned back. "Mister," he said, "thank you." Daniel watched them find seats near the back. He stayed standing, gripping a pole as the bus lurched forward. He didn't know why, but he followed them off at their stop. It was a rough part of town. Dim lights, cracked sidewalks, a small apartment building with peeling paint and a broken front door lock. The mother hesitated. You don't have to. I know, Daniel said. I just wanted to make sure you got home safe. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. Thank you, really. The boy tugged at Daniel's sleeve. What's your name? Daniel. I'm Eli, the boy said proudly. This is my mom. Daniel smiled, a real one, the kind he hadn't worn in years. Inside the apartment, the heat barely worked. A tiny artificial tree stood in the corner, decorated with paper stars and string. No presents underneath. Just hope, hanging by a thread. I'll make some soup, the mother said quickly, clearly uncomfortable. It's not much. Daniel looked around, memories crashing into him. This was his childhood, almost exactly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, then stopped himself. Money would fix things, but not the right way. Not tonight. Eli, Daniel said, kneeling slightly. Do you still believe in Santa? Eli nodded eagerly. Yeah. Even if he forgets sometimes. Daniel stood up, then the first thing tonight. Santa might need a little help. An hour later, Daniel stood outside a closed toy store, on the phone with his assistant. I know it's Christmas Eve, he said firmly. Open it. Pay whatever they want. By midnight, the apartment was filled with laughter. Wrapped gifts covered the floor. Warm blankets, groceries, a space heater, things that mattered. Eli stared at the presents in disbelief. Mom, he whispered. Santa remembered. His mother cried silently, covering her mouth. Daniel watched from the doorway, his chest tight, but lighter than it had been in decades. When it was time to leave, Eli hugged him hard. You're my favorite helper, he said. Daniel blinked back tears. You're my favorite reminder, he replied. That night, Daniel didn't go back to his penthouse. He walked the city instead, handed out coats, paid for meals, sat with people who were usually invisible. And for the first time in years, he wasn't lonely. Because